Nestled in a quiet farming village at the edge of Greenville County, life moved at the pace of wind and harvest. That was where Iris Monroe, a 46-year-old seamstress with weathered hands and kind eyes, had tried to piece her life back together, one stitch at a time. Iris had been through a long, silent kind of heartbreak. Her first marriage, though never cruel, had been a draining, loveless union that left her more of a ghost than a wife. Years of compromise and buried dreams had slowly eroded her confidence, until one day, with nothing left to lose, she packed her bags and left the small-town life she once clung to. She never imagined that starting over would lead her to Warren Ellsworth, a 58-year-old retired music teacher with laughter lines and a gentle soul that had quietly mourned the death of his wife for nearly a decade. They met at a community craft market, of all places. Iris had set up a small booth selling hand-sewn aprons and scarves. Warren had been browsing with a curious look in his eyes, drawn to the hand-stitched lyrics embroidered into one of Iris's quilts. He hummed the tune aloud, and Iris recognized the melody. It was one her grandmother used to sing during rainstorms. They talked. They laughed. And, slowly, something unfamiliar yet warm began to bloom. It started with coffee on the porch. Then dinners filled with stories. And eventually, weekend trips to local antique shops, where Iris would tease Warren for his obsession with old radios and jukeboxes. They didn't rush anything. Both had known loss. Both had learned to guard their hearts. But somehow, over 2 years, their quiet companionship turned into a love that neither had expected in the second half of their lives. And that love didn't just include the two of them. It extended to Lena, Iris's 12-year-old daughter from her previous marriage, a shy, artistic girl who took to Warren like ivy to a wall. He helped her build a birdhouse from scrap wood, introduced her to jazz music, and was the only adult who truly listened when she talked about her dreams of becoming a wildlife illustrator. Warren never treated Lena like an afterthought. He treated her like his own. When Iris and Warren decided to marry, there were no grand announcements. No fanfare. Just a handwritten invitation delivered to close friends and a small ceremony beneath the sycamore tree in Warren's backyard. The sky was blushing with lavender that evening, and Warren played the violin as Iris walked barefoot across the grass. As a wedding gift to their new family, Warren offered something personal, a rundown plot of land on the outskirts of town, a piece of his childhood, long neglected, with only a decaying cottage left behind by his uncle. "I was going to sell it years ago," he said. "But I think we could make it into something beautiful. Together." Iris didn't hesitate. She rolled up her sleeves, tied her curls in a scarf, and dove in. What followed was nothing short of a miracle in slow motion. Every weekend, the three of them worked side by side, pulling weeds, tearing down rotted walls, repainting, hammering, dreaming. Iris sold more quilts to fund new windows. Warren bartered music lessons for plumbing work. Lena painted murals on the walls, trees with bright orange leaves, constellations above the bed she called her own. They called it Hollow Creek House. Because a small stream curved just behind the garden, and the house, though once hollow and forgotten, now rang with music, laughter, and the smell of cinnamon bread from Iris's oven. It wasn't just a house. It was a living, breathing memory in the making. As time passed, Warren's health began to shift. He didn't complain much, but Iris noticed. The moments when he grew winded walking to the mailbox. The stiffness in his hands that made tuning his violin difficult. The nights he stared out the window a little too long, like he was memorizing the world he loved in case he had to say goodbye. He never said anything aloud. But one evening, while sipping cider on the porch, he gently rested a hand over Iris's and said, "Promise me you'll keep Hollow Creek safe, for you and Lena." She smiled, brushing it off with humor, but the look in his eyes told her he meant it. He had already spoken to someone, he said. Made arrangements. Just in case. Iris didn't press. Warren always kept his word. Then came the day no one expected. Warren had been preparing the soil for new rose bushes when he suddenly dropped to his knees in the garden. Lena was the first to scream. Iris ran to him, her voice cracking as she begged him to stay with her, to open his eyes, to breathe. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but time was not on their side. Warren died of a heart attack before he ever reached the hospital. And just like that, The music stopped. Iris's grief was unbearable. Lena shut down completely, retreating into sketchbooks and silence. And Hollow Creek House, once vibrant with color, seemed to dull overnight. The kitchen grew quiet. The porch remained still. The garden, without Warren, didn't bloom. But Iris clung to the home with all she had. It was the only place where his memory was more than a whisper. She thought that would be the end of the sorrow. She was wrong. 2 weeks later, a man in a suit arrived at their doorstep. He introduced himself as Calder Ellsworth, Warren's nephew and only living blood relative. He did not ask how they were holding up. He did not offer condolences. He asked to see the deed. By law, he said, this property was Warren's sole ownership before the marriage. And as such, it forms part of his estate. I have every right to claim my portion. Iris stared at him, heart pounding. You want to take this house? She asked, voice shaking. He gave a businesslike shrug. Not take. Sell. Divide the value. It's protocol. But Iris didn't hear anything after that. The man standing on her porch had never pulled weeds from the soil, never shared bread in the kitchen, never heard Lena's bedtime stories. And yet, now, he stood with paperwork, ready to erase the only piece of Warren they had left. The afternoon sun slanted across the porch as Calder Ellsworth stood there, his polished shoes tapping against the floorboards as if he couldn't wait to tear the house apart. Iris held Lena behind her, shielding her from the cold finality in Calder's voice. The law is the law, he repeated. And this property wasn't jointly acquired during the marriage. Which means, as Warren's next of kin, I'm entitled to my share. Iris stared at him, disbelief crawling over her face. You haven't spoken to him in what, 15 years? She asked, her voice low and brittle. That's irrelevant, he replied, straightening his blazer. Bloodlines don't fade just because people stop talking. He gave her a tight-lipped smile before handing over an official notice. You'll be hearing from my attorney. Then he walked away. Just like that. That evening, Iris stood in the kitchen, the same kitchen Warren had installed with his own hands, staring at the papers. The official language blurred before her eyes. She had never dealt with wills or probate or legal filings. Her world had been thread and needle, spices and soil, bedtime stories and grocery lists. Not this. Certainly not courtroom battles with slick lawyers and inheritance claims. What does it mean? Lena asked quietly from behind her. Iris sighed. It means, he's trying to take this house from us. Lena's face twisted, a mix of fear and rage burning behind her eyes. He can't. This is ours. This is Dad's. Iris closed her eyes at that word, Dad. Lena had only started calling Warren that a year before he passed. She had waited until she truly meant it. Until she knew, deep down, that he would never leave her the way others had. Now someone wanted to rip that from them, too. And Iris felt powerless to stop it. Over the following days, she tried to gather information. She asked around town for lawyers, but each one quoted fees she couldn't afford, not without selling her sewing machine, her furniture, and likely even the house Calder was trying to claim. Desperation grew. Then, one morning, Iris awoke to find Lena gone. Panic clawed at her chest. She ran outside barefoot, yelling her daughter's name. She found her an hour later at the public library, nose buried in a book titled Property Rights and Inheritance Law. I'm not letting him win, Mom, Lena said simply. Iris dropped to her knees, tears spilling as she hugged her daughter. You shouldn't have run off like that, she said, voice breaking. But I had to do something, Lena whispered. He's not going to take what we built. And that was when Iris saw it, not just courage, but fire. Lena had inherited Warren's willpower. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to fight back. Through a local teacher's recommendation, Lena connected them to a small-town legal aid organization in Ridgepine. One of the junior attorneys, May Harrington, was only a few years out of law school. Young, bright-eyed, and driven by justice, she met Iris and Lena at a cafe and listened to their story. When Iris apologized for not having money to pay, May just smiled and said, justice shouldn't come with a price tag. I'll take the case pro bono. May wasn't seasoned in court, but she came prepared with research, case studies, and a voice that didn't tremble. She filed motions to delay the sale. Calder had already begun pushing through and began requesting any records Warren might have left. But the problem was, they couldn't find a will. And without it, Calder's claim stood on solid legal ground. The first hearing was scheduled on a gray Monday morning. The courtroom smelled of wood polish and stale coffee. Calder sat in a crisp gray suit beside a lawyer twice May's age, who barely glanced at Iris except to raise a judgmental eyebrow. When the judge entered, Calder's attorney leaned over and whispered something that made Calder smirk. Iris gripped Lena's hand. May stood, confident but composed, and gave an impassioned opening, about family, legacy, and how the law should protect not only bloodlines but real bonds, the kind forged in kitchens and gardens, not birth certificates. But Calder's lawyer was merciless. Compelling story, he said, but ultimately irrelevant. There's no evidence of a will. No legal document assigning ownership to the widow or her daughter. The property was purchased by Mr. Ellsworth before the marriage. Therefore, it's an estate asset, and my client, as next of kin, has a rightful claim. The judge nodded slowly. Unless new evidence is provided, I will have no choice but to proceed with that interpretation. Iris's heart sank. Back at the house, the mood was silent. The walls seemed colder. Iris paced the floors, touching the doorknobs Warren had polished, the shelf he'd carved into the living room wall. She was looking for something, anything, that would prove he had meant for them to stay. She tore through drawers. Checked his old guitar case. Flipped through photo albums. Nothing. Then Lena said something that stopped her in her tracks. What about the box? Iris turned. What box? The one he kept above the armoire. Remember? He used to say, some things are worth guarding higher than you can reach. A rush of adrenaline hit Iris like a thunderclap. They ran to the bedroom. Iris grabbed a step stool and climbed, fingers fumbling over the dusty top shelf of the antique wardrobe. And there it was. A cedarwood box, etched with vines and stars. Inside were old receipts, birthday cards from Lena, handwritten love notes from Iris, and a sealed envelope with a gold notary seal. Her hands trembled as she opened it. A living deed, signed, notarized, and dated 6 months prior. Warren Ellsworth had legally transferred Hollow Creek House to Lena Monroe. He had done it while alive. Just as he'd promised. Iris collapsed onto the bed, sobbing. Not just from relief, but from the overwhelming wave of love. Warren had protected them, just as he said he would. Even in death, he had kept his promise. The sun rose quietly over Ridgepine County Courthouse as Iris, Lena, and their lawyer May Harrington walked up the stone steps with a manila folder clutched tightly in May's hands. Inside it was the single document that could change everything. The courtroom looked the same, wood-paneled walls, brass fixtures, and the ever-intimidating bench where Judge Ellery sat with his signature stern gaze. Calder Ellsworth and his lawyer were already there, smug and relaxed as they shuffled papers and made small talk. This time, Iris stood straighter. Lena sat on the edge of her chair, fists tight in her lap. Warren's voice echoed in Iris's mind. Promise me you'll keep Hollow Creek safe, for you and Lena. She had made that promise. And today, she would keep it. The judge began the hearing with a recap of the arguments from the prior session. Unless new documentation is submitted, he said gravely, we will move forward based on the current record of ownership. May stood. Your Honor, she interrupted gently but firmly, we respectfully request to submit a previously undisclosed legal deed, signed, dated, and notarized by Mr. Warren Ellsworth, transferring the property in question to his stepdaughter, Miss Lena Monroe, during his lifetime. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Calder's smirk disappeared in an instant. May walked to the bench and handed the envelope to the court clerk, who passed it to Judge Ellery. The courtroom fell silent as he scanned the document, his eyebrows slowly lifting. This appears legitimate, he murmured. Notarized 6 months prior to Mr. Ellsworth's passing. Full transfer of property. And filed in accordance with Ridgepine property law. He turned to Calder's lawyer. Do you wish to contest its authenticity? The man floundered. I was not made aware of this document until now, Your Honor. I will need time to examine it. The judge shook his head. We've delayed long enough. The authenticity is evident. Unless you can present contradictory evidence today, this deed stands. Calder's face turned the color of chalk. His mouth opened, then closed again. May glanced toward Iris, her lips curving into the faintest smile. Calder stood abruptly. That house is part of my family's legacy. He had no right to give it away like that. The judge's eyes narrowed. He had every right. Mr. Ellsworth was of sound mind and legally able to transfer property prior to his death. You had no relationship with your uncle and made no effort to reconcile while he was alive. This is not about bloodlines, it's about intent, and the law respects that. The words hit with the finality of a gavel. The deed stands. The case is dismissed. Judge Ellery struck the gavel once, clean, sharp. Lena squeezed Iris's hand so tightly it hurt. But Iris didn't let go. Tears pooled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from a kind of joy so deep it didn't need words. The storm had passed. And Warren's love, his protection, had weathered it all. Outside the courthouse, the wind picked up, warm and sweet like the promise of spring. Calder exited quickly, avoiding reporters and curious onlookers, his lawyer trailing behind. May stepped between Iris and Lena, arms around both of them. "You did it," she whispered. "You kept your promise." "No," Iris said, her voice shaking. "Warren did. I just followed the path he left behind." That evening, they returned to Hollow Creek House. The lights were on. The porch light flickered like a wink. Inside, Iris baked a fresh loaf of bread, the kind Warren loved with butter and jam. Lena brought out the old record player and placed one of Warren's favorite jazz albums on the turntable. The saxophone crooned through the house, and for a moment, it felt like he was there, just in the next room, whistling along. After dinner, Iris pulled out the cedar box once more. Together, she and Lena sifted through its contents, little treasures Warren had saved. Photos. Receipts from flea markets. The first drawing Lena ever gave him, a stick figure family with big smiles and a crooked house. Tucked in the corner was a folded note, sealed with a red wax stamp. Iris opened it carefully. It was a letter. "To my girls," it read. "If you're reading this, it means the time has come. I didn't want to leave, not when there was still so much laughter to share. But if I've done anything right in this life, it was loving you both with all I had. The house is yours, Lena. Not because of the law. But because you built it with your laughter, your paintbrushes, and your Saturday morning pancakes. And Iris, my North Star, don't ever doubt that you saved me. In a world that had gone silent, you brought back music. Keep it playing. And know that even if I'm not there to hear it, I'm dancing anyway. Forever yours. Warren." They cried that night. Not from pain, but from the beauty of being loved so well. In the weeks that followed, Hollow Creek became more than just a home again. Neighbors stopped by with pies and handwritten cards. May became a frequent visitor, offering to help Iris set up a small quilting business online. Lena painted a mural on the side of the shed, a swirling night sky, a violin, and 3 silhouettes holding hands beneath the sycamore tree. People came to admire it. Some wept. Others simply stood in silence. It wasn't just art. It was a story. Of a man who loved with quiet strength. Of a woman who fought with courage. Of a daughter who stood tall in the face of injustice. And beneath the mural, in painted script, Lena added a final quote, the words Warren had whispered to Iris the day they moved into Hollow Creek House. "Home isn't made of wood and nails. It's made of hearts that choose to stay." News of the court victory spread quickly through Ridgepine, a town where stories traveled faster than traffic. Most people had expected the case to be lost before it even began. After all, how often did women like Iris, quiet, widowed, working class, stand a chance in legal battles against sharp-tongued lawyers and inheritance loopholes? But something changed the moment May Harrington held up that deed in court. It wasn't just a legal win. It was a moral one, a reminder to everyone that love, loyalty, and legacy could still matter more than bloodlines and bank accounts. The week following the verdict, the Ellsworth Community Center hosted a small event, originally scheduled as a spring arts showcase, but now gently pivoted into something more personal, a celebration of Hollow Creek House. May, bashful but glowing, sat near the front with her legal aid team. Town leaders gave short speeches praising her for championing justice not just in paperwork, but in heart. Iris, blushing and overwhelmed, accepted flowers and hugs from strangers. Lena stood beside her, half shy and half proud, clutching a sketchbook under her arm. At the back of the room, pinned to a display board, was a print of Lena's mural. The crowd gathered to admire it. "That's the sycamore from their wedding, isn't it? Look at the way she painted the sky, just like Warren used to describe it in his songs. The way those three silhouettes are holding hands, it's not just a family. It's a choice." Lena overheard someone whisper, that house was more than a building. It was a heart with walls. After the event, Iris was approached by Mr. Blevins, the director of Ridge Pine Historical Society. He had been following their story closely, moved by how a once forgotten property had become a symbol of community perseverance. "We'd like to nominate Hollow Creek House," he said, "for preservation status. Not just as a historic home, but as a site of local heritage." Iris blinked, unsure what to say. "You've turned a ruined plot into something sacred," he continued. "And it's time the town recognized that." Back home, life didn't slow down, it simply shifted into something softer. The garden, which had withered during the chaos of grief and court, began to bloom again. Iris replanted sunflowers along the fence line, and Lena, inspired by the mural's attention, began a new project, a painted stepping stone path through the garden, each stone representing a season of their lives. One stone showed a broken heart slowly mending. Another showed a courtroom gavel cracking like thunder. The final stone? A painted doorknob, golden glowing, with the word welcome beneath it. "Why a doorknob?" Iris asked as they painted side by side. "Because," Lena said, "Dad always said home starts the moment you open the door." May continued to visit regularly. She and Iris had grown close, like sisters who had known each other in another life. One evening over tea, May revealed something that made Iris freeze. "I almost didn't take your case," May said. "I was burned out. My last client ghosted me after I won. I started to wonder if fighting for people who couldn't afford lawyers was even worth it." "But you did take it," Iris replied, gently. May nodded. "Because your daughter sent me a message with a drawing of your house. She wrote, 'This place is full of someone's love. Please help us protect it.'" Iris covered her mouth with both hands, tears pooling in her eyes. That night, she hugged Lena tighter than she had in weeks. The following Sunday, Iris held a small memorial in the backyard. Nothing fancy, just friends, neighbors, and old music echoing softly through Warren's vintage record player. They set a framed photo of him beside a vase of gardenias. Everyone took turns sharing memories. One neighbor recalled Warren's late-night violin practices and how the notes used to drift through the hills. Another remembered him bartering music lessons for landscaping help. May read a short passage from Warren's journal, something Iris had never seen before. In it, he wrote, "Some men leave behind names carved in stone. I hope my name is remembered in laughter, in wind chimes, in the warm smell of cinnamon and sawdust." The group grew quiet. And then someone, no one remembered who, began to hum the melody Warren used to play when Iris walked in the room. It was the same tune he'd played the night of their wedding. The same tune he hummed while fixing loose floorboards. The same tune Lena now whistled while watering the sunflowers. That evening, as the sun dipped low behind Hollow Creek House, Iris lit a candle and placed it in the windowsill. Not for mourning, but for gratitude. She walked through each room, fingers brushing along wooden frames, doors, shelves, all the things Warren had built. None of it was grand. But every piece of it was intimate, touched by his hands, and soaked in the memories they created. The home wasn't just safe from Calder's grasp. It was eternal, because it had been forged from something deeper than law or property. It had been built from love and motion. Later that night, Lena found her mother at the kitchen table, sipping chamomile tea and sketching on a napkin. "What are you drawing?" she asked. Iris smiled. "An idea," she said. "For the next quilt." Lena leaned over. The design was rough, but clear, 3 trees, 1 large, 2 smaller, their branches touching at the top like clasped hands. "I was thinking we could call it Roots and Wings," Iris said softly. For what we've been. And what we're becoming. Lena nodded. Can I help? I was hoping you would. Outside, the house glowed from the inside out. Not just with lights, but with life. Hollow Creek wasn't just standing, it was thriving. And from the porch, where Warren once played soft tunes as twilight settled, Iris whispered to the wind. We're still here. And we'll be here tomorrow, too. Spring melted into summer, and Hollow Creek House stood as it always had, modest but alive, with lavender in the windowsill and the quiet hum of wind through old wood beams. But inside, something new was being born. In the sewing room Warren had helped Iris renovate years ago, a bright little nook with checkered curtains and polished pine floors, Iris and Lena worked side by side, stitching pieces of fabric into a quilt unlike any Iris had ever made. It wasn't for sale. It wasn't for display. It was for them. Each square told a story. A faded plaid from Warren's old flannel shirt. A slice of Lena's childhood curtains, painted with stars and owls. A swatch of the apron Iris wore the night she baked her first loaf of bread in the Hollow Creek kitchen. A stitched map of the garden, with embroidered sunflowers and a tiny bluebird near the edge. And in the center, the words. Built with love. Chosen with heart. Protected by all. They called it the legacy quilt. When it was done, they draped it over the couch, the same one where Warren used to nap with the newspaper folded over his chest, one hand resting on his heart. It became the soul of the house, whispering warmth through each room. Visitors who saw it grew quiet, touched by something they couldn't quite explain. It's like the house is hugging you, one neighbor said. And that's exactly what it felt like. Months passed, and Hollow Creek's story became more than a town tale. Local news outlets picked it up, seamstress and daughter win back their home and landmark case. May Harrington, the young lawyer who had once doubted herself, was offered a full-time role at a prestigious advocacy nonprofit, and turned it down to stay in Ridgepine. She wanted to help people like Iris, people who didn't have money or power but had truth on their side. Iris began hosting Saturday quilting classes at the community center, teaching others how to turn scraps into storytelling. Her class wasn't just about technique. It was about healing. Each student was asked to bring one piece of fabric that meant something to them. A baby blanket. A shirt from a lost parent. A curtain from the kitchen where life once felt whole. Together, they stitched them into new patterns, pain transformed into beauty. One late summer afternoon, Lena was in the attic when she found a dusty box Warren had once stashed away. Inside, cassette tapes, sheet music, and a handwritten notebook titled Songs for the Porch. She flipped through it slowly, lyrics Warren had written but never performed. Notes on melodies, ideas for lullabies, and a final entry scrawled in faded ink. Write one last song for them. For Iris, for Lena, for the house. Something the wind can carry when I'm gone. That night, Lena brought the notebook to Iris, who read every word in silence. Then, something miraculous happened. Iris wrote a letter to the music teacher at Ridgepine High School, and together they arranged to have the lyrics turned into an original piece. Students played it at the Autumn Festival, under strings of lights and a canopy of orange leaves. The song was soft, winding, and full of heart. They called it Porch Light. And when it played, Iris closed her eyes and felt Warren's hand in hers once more. As the first anniversary of the court victory approached, May suggested hosting an open house, not just for celebration, but to raise funds for the Legal Aid Center. Iris agreed, and together they planned something intimate yet powerful. Guests were invited to walk the garden path, admire the mural Lena had painted, and hear stories behind each room of the house. In the living room, the legacy quilt was displayed like a centerpiece. On the porch, local musicians played jazz. In the kitchen, loaves of cinnamon bread baked in tribute to Warren. Iris gave a short speech. Not rehearsed. Not written. Just felt. I never imagined, she said softly, that a broken-down cottage would become the most sacred thing in my life. We built this place with our hands. But more than that, with our love. She paused, letting the breeze carry her words. My husband may not be here to greet you. But he's in every floorboard. Every nail. Every corner filled with laughter and song. When someone tried to take that from us, we didn't fight with anger. We fought with proof of what mattered. She looked at Lena. Family isn't just who you're born to. It's who you show up for. Who you protect. And who you love when no one's watching. The crowd applauded. Some wiped tears from their cheeks. Others simply nodded, holding their hearts. Later that night, after the guests had left and the garden had quieted, Iris sat on the porch with Lena curled up beside her. Fireflies blinked across the lawn. The air smelled of warm bread and fresh earth. "Do you ever think he's still here?" Lena asked. Iris smiled. "I don't think he ever left." She looked toward the window, where the candle still flickered every night. Warren's light. Then she whispered. "You gave us a home, love. And we'll keep it burning." And so, in a quiet town with wildflowers in its soil and stories stitched into its skies, a simple house on the edge of Hollow Creek became something more. A place that had been claimed by law. Defended by heart. And filled, always, with the kind of love that never really dies.